Hello, everyone. I am your host today, 𝘮𝘰𝘵𝘀𝘆. We are doing a Swine podcast today with Guillermo Ramis. Guillermo is a professor at the University of Murcia. Guillermo, how are you today?
I'm really fine, and I'm happy to be here with you today. It's a honor for me to make this podcast for your audience.
Yes, well, we're glad to have you here today. Our audience may not be very familiar with you and your background, so would you mind sharing a little bit about who you are and what you're currently doing?
Okay, I'm a veterinarian, and currently I'm teaching at the University of Murcia in southeast of Spain. But really, I developed all my professional career in a very big company producing pigs. I was a practitioner and also participate in the research and development department. And then I jumped to the university 15 years ago. And that's me. I'm a veterinarian that likes to teach.
Sure. That's wonderful. Well, in your biography, we saw that you have some work with xenotransplantation. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with xenotransplantation and why that might be important to our audience today?
Yeah, of course. As a researcher, since 20 years ago, more or less, I've been involved in different programs of research about xenotransplantation. Our main goal is the liver transplantation, and this was a joint venture and a multidisciplinary team that started working with the aim of getting the liver of a pig and put into a person to keep it alive. And we have been researching the last 20 years with this goal. And currently, xenotransplantation is a little bit the velocity, the increase velocity in Spain has decreased because a very good news that we have a very high rate of donation, and then xenotransplantation is not so important. But the last 15 years, we have developed a very hard research in this field.
What are some challenges with xenotransplantation?
Well, really, the challenge is to find the correct donor, because apparently 50, 60 years ago, the idea was we can use the primates as donor because they are phylogenetically very close to the human, and then the immune rejection is going to be lower or more easy to avoid. And this is not true. And moreover, the species nearest to us are absolutely endangered of extinction. So it's not ethical anyway to use them as donors. Then, moreover, there are more added problems. For example, the virus. The jump of virus between species in the same order is relatively easy. What are we living today?
Yes.
Is a clear example where much more severe between species in the same order, and we are primates. So the jump of retrovirus and herpes virus between primates is really easy, and these were the reasons that pushed us to forget absolutely the primates as donors and to start working with the best species we think is the pig. And this is the reason why a veterinarian of pigs is involved in xenotransplantation.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The pigs, the really important problem with pigs is that we are very, very far phylogenetically. And for example, the pig have antigens we have no. And this is the main challenge, trying to use the organs of a pig in a human. The immune rejection, the immunological rejection is going to be really, really important and hard. And today we know perfectly that if we don't modify genetically these donors, these pigs that are going to be donors, it's impossible to use their organs. But the good news is that pig is the species with the technology, the biotechnology of reproduction, of genetic modification, and of diseases detection, the most developed all over the farm animals. And this is the really good news.
I think that's very interesting that we switched from primates to other species. It certainly makes sense, as you said, with COVID currently demonstrating the risk that we would have staying within an order. And for years, we talked about using pig valves in humans for, for heart conditions, right? But what I'm hearing you say is we really need to go a step beyond that now and really look at genetically modifying the pig so that the antigens in the liver aren't as expressive to cause a potential rejection. So what type of components or proteins are you targeting that we would have to genetically modify out of the pig?
This is a really good question. And if we talk about the liver, that is our goal, thinking in a heart is a really simple organ. It sounds very amazing, but it's true. It only pump and produce a couple of proteins. The kidney is so really simple. It filters the blood using the blood pressure, the electricity polarity, and produce a couple of proteins. But the liver is a very, very complicated organ. Produce more than 2,500 different proteins. And some of them are absolutely necessary for the life. For example, all the coagulation proteins are produced, or for example, all the complement proteins are produced there. And once we think in this, and we have to change our mind and think what are the important proteins for at least avoid the immune rejection. Well, the first step we done was to produce pigs with complement regulatory proteins. Why this? Because the first immune action against an organ of a pig inside a primate or a human is the complement activation. And the really interesting problem is that our protein, our regulatory protein that are safe measures to avoid that complement act against ourselves, heterologous complements. I want to mean the human proteins stop the human complement, the pig protein stop the pig complement, but the human proteins are not able to stop the pig complement. And this is the bad news, because we are going to put an organ of a pig inside a human with a lot of antigens which are going to be recognized and by antibodies and are going to trigger the complement activation, but the protein of these organs are not able to stop the complement of the human. And this was the first approach. And in fact, most of our research have been done with pigs with CD55, CD59, and CD46, that are the three main complement regulatory proteins. Today, we have much more modifications, and for example, the main antigen that is present in the endothelial cells of the pig are the alpha-gal. The alpha-gal antigen is a protein in the family of the ABO blood groups family, but we have this antigen. And it's a very simple antigen. What I mean is in the wall of a lot of bacteria, immediately after our birth, we are stimulated against this antigen, and we have antibodies preformed, naturally preformed. So it's really easy and really fast the development of the hyperacute rejection based on the alpha-gal antigen and these natural preformed antibodies. Well, the other main strategy should be avoid to produce pigs that have this antigen, and we have done it. And there are two different strategies. The first is to put inside a gene that is producing an enzyme that make that this antigen become the B group. Well, we have a softer problem. Now we have all the pigs are B group, but not all the humans have antibodies against B group. Okay, and the other main strategy is to produce knockout animals for one enzyme that is the responsible to put the last sugar in this antigen. And in this way, this antigen become not antigenic. It's smaller, and you know that a molecule to be antigenic have to be a size, an enough size. If we cut the last glucose, we make this antigen is not enough big and is not antigenic. Well, there are much more strategies. In fact, today in USA, there is a company that offer you the pig 2.0. And they offer you with a pig with more, they say the pig have more than 62 genetic modifications. The problem is that it's a private development, and when you, as a researcher, when you ask, okay, can you save me the list of modifications? They say, oh no, this is the know-how of the company, so we cannot say you what are you using in your research. And this is a problem for most of the scientific community.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that was my next question, was on average, how many knockouts or gene modifications we'd be looking at to have a successful liver transplant. So we're looking at 60 some.
60 plus, they say that we have. In times, 20 years ago, for example, to make this genetic modification was really complicated, because in most of cases you cannot predict where this modification was going to be in the zygote or in the oocyte you were using to produce the genetic modification. Today, in the age of the CRISPR-Cas9, it's much more easy, because you can edit and change the genome in the exact place you want. So it's much more easy. In fact, 20 years ago, most of the oocytes you subject to any modification will not give an animal, because were lethal, the part in which the transgene was placed. Okay.
With all of the modifications that you're making, particularly to the immune system in that pig, what's the typical survivability of a litter of modified pigs? Is it very low, or do they do well until time of harvest? And then what weight or age would you harvest? Are you talking
about the survival of the animal, or the survival of the graft?
Of the animal. We'll talk about the graft in a minute.
You know that any genetically modified animal is a mystery by itself. I want to mean.
Right.
Now I'm working with genetically modified pigs here in my university. I'm cooperating with other research groups, and it's really amazing to see how it's really unpredictable what kind of problems we are going to have. And in fact, in one of the programs we are working now, we have produced pigs not genetically modified. I want to mean have been produced in vitro, and we want to see the long of the life for this animal, because the oldest people in the world produced in vitro is 45. So this is a model of length of life, because we don't know how is going to be the life of these people. In the same way, the genetically modified animals used to have some problems. Well, it depends. It depends the way you have produced. As I said, when you are using CRISPR, it's much more easy to predict that the animal is going to be viable and is going to have no problems of survival.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that goes to the next question then, is what's the survivability of the transplant itself? So
this is a really good question.
Yeah.
This is a really good question. For example, in Spain, it's very universal, but I really know well the Spanish regulations. And for example, in Spain, the National Transplant Organization would not allow us to make any research in humans up to have more than 6 months of survival in a primate model. And this is the reason why we rear pigs and monkeys, because we mandatory have to use a model with monkeys. Today, in taking all the experiences all over the world, we have more than 9 months of survival with kidney. I'm talking about modified pigs in baboon, for example. We have more than 6 months of survival with heart, but we have no more 28 days of survival with liver. And this is why we are really interested in the liver. It's a very, very complex universe. It's not an organ, it's a universe. And it's involved in a huge quantity of biological events. So it's really difficult. But, well, the really good news is that we don't want to make a permanent transplant. In fact, our dream is to produce bridge transplant. And what does it mean? It means that in Spain, in 3-4 days, we are finding a liver for a people that is in zero code. In Spain, we call zero code when somebody is going to die between 24 and 48 hours because the liver is completely destroyed and the failure is absolutely. Well, okay, if somebody is going to die in 24 hours and we need 3 days, the good idea should be take the liver of a pig, put in these people, keep alive this person the 2-3 days, the additional days we need to find the human organ. Because the problem is that every 1 hour in critical liver failure, you lose 10% of survival possibility if one liver arrived. So you can calculate a people that is around 10-12 hours in liver complete failure. It has a very low chance to survive, even if you find a liver. So this is our dream, to keep these people alive up to the moment we find the correct liver for them.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. When you do the transplant, would you have to have the animal of equal weight to the recipient, or is there quite a bit of variation that you could do? So, right, a 50-kilo pig for a 70-kilo person, or does it need to match up more correctly than that?
No, in our experiences, we should have a pig that is 60% of the weight of the graft. And this is the other good news, because one of the problems we have in the Western civilization is that we have reduced the child mortality incredibly. And the problem is that we have no child donors. And we are losing a lot of childs that would need a transplant, but we have no the organ, because the organ of an adult is really huge to put inside a child of 3-4 years old. Well, we can split the liver, we can do a lot of things, but the xenotransplantation would allow us one more chance, because you have to think that one pig born with 1 kilogram, between 1 and 1.5 kilogram, and well, increase the weight, 400 grams every. The first age is 200 grams every day, but then at 3-4 weeks is gaining 300 grams every day. So you can decide the exact moment in which you will have the donor for this child and the correct size to get the liver for these pediatric patients that are now dying because there are no organs available.
Right. That's very interesting. I wasn't aware of the 60% rule, so that's very interesting to me. When we think about, obviously, anytime we talk about the word genetically modified, immediately people in the public have questions, right? Concerns and questions. So what are you hearing in terms of public acceptance of something like this, where we know it's a life-saving technology? How are you hearing in terms of public perception of that?
This is a good question, a very, very interesting question, Laura. And we made this question 20 years ago. And we thought, okay, we are putting an enormous effort and a mountain of money involving a crowd of people. And what's going to happen if then the public are no, we will have no, we don't want an organ, an animal organ inside them. And we start asking to the population. We made very, very well structured and validated questionnaires. And since that age, we have been continuously asking to different segments of population the opinion about xenotransplantation. And it's really, really interesting to see how the people has no huge problems to accept an organ of animal in the case of the same results than a human organ. But interestingly, we have differences. And for example, to have in mind, the physicians would accept 60% of them an animal organs, but the segment of population with the best fields for xenotransplantation that would accept a pig organ in 98% of the cases are the students of veterinary sciences. It's really interesting. And why? But I'm absolutely convinced that is because the relation with the animals we have. That probably we understand the animals in another sense. And of course, we have no problems to accept the organs of the animals. For me, it was a surprise when we start. And we have tested my faculty 3 times, but we have also tested the other of the Spanish faculties and some faculties in Brazil, in Poland, and in other places. And always is the same answer. The veterinarians, I can assume that the veterinarians have the same feel that the students of veterinary sciences. The veterinarians accept the organs of pigs without no kind of problems. And in fact, as you said before, we now are absolutely commonly, it's absolutely common to use valves, hard bar valves, or even some parts of pancreas. So I think it's not going to be a problem for the population to accept an organ of a pig.
Yeah, I think that's certainly always going to be a question, right? And there are obviously religions and so forth where that may not be acceptable. But I think, again, it's interesting to hear, and particularly the medical doctors may be a little bit lower percentage of acceptance than the veterinary doctors. Because again, I thought, well, if you're part of the science field, you're probably very accepting of an animal organ and the science behind it. But it sounds like even there's maybe a little difference.
Yes, it could be. We have to take into account that the physicians, the medicians has other education. And in fact, when the really interesting thing of these teams involved in xenotransplantation is the contact between immunologists, nurses, veterinarians, anesthesiologists, intensive care specialists, are huge teams. And then you can make benchmark. You can share your knowledge, and you can see how the other teams are working, and it's really, really interesting. And in fact, probably this is one of the reasons why I continue working with the surgeons of transplant that have been working in different projects, because they knew how the veterinarians work, and it was I think it is the best of the multidisciplinary teams. The xenotransplantation is really a very potent sums of knowledge is nice, really nice.
Absolutely. It's interesting. Are there any other organs that you're working on besides the liver?
Not really, because the team with which we have been working are specialists in liver. I have to say, and this is my proud, that the hospital of my city, in Murcia, has the highest rate of liver transplant by population unit all over Europe. What I mean, we live in Spain, as you know, since the last 30 years, Spain is a leader in donation rate. We are now in 51 donors per million of population, and you should think that in the average of the European Union, that is our geographical environment, is 21. We are 2.5 plus folds higher than the average of the European Union. And there are very surprising examples at Germany that has less than 10% donors per million of population. And inside Spain, in this frame of very high donation rate, our hospital has one of the highest donation rates all over Europe, all over Spain. And I have to say, and this is very, very amazing, that during the last 3 months, well, everybody know what's a waiting list. A waiting list is you are presented at the hospital, and the team decide that you need a transplant, and you go inside a list that, at least in Spain, is at least your name has a date, an hour, a minute, and a second. And this is the order in which the organs are processed. Okay. Well, when I start working in xenotransplantation program, the waiting list, the people could be in waiting list around 6-7 months. 6-7 months. And during the last 2 months in Murcia, the length of waiting of the people is less than 3 days. The people is being visited on Tuesday and is being transplanted on Friday. It's amazing. It's really crazy. It's incredible. In fact, yesterday we had 2 transplants with 2 multi-organic donors, and this means 2 livers, 4 kidneys, 4 corneas, 4 pancreas, 2 pancreas. It was crazy. You can imagine how the people were there. I have to say that my wife is part of the transplant team, so I know perfectly how they were. They was crazy, running, looking for resources, looking for rooms, looking for teams, looking for surgery rooms. It was amazing. And for me, as a transplantation researcher, this is a problem, because the Spanish government is not investing in xenotransplantation, because the success of the allotransplantation here is really nice. So, well, anyway, we don't want only for Spain. We have a universal vision. So we know that this is not universal. This is not the same in all over the world. So we continue working in xenotransplantation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Well, it's wonderful work. I think it's absolutely great, and it's wonderful for the human population, and it's exciting.
Absolutely, Laura. You can imagine. I love to save animal lives. It's my profession, and but cooperate in saving human lives is amazing. It's other dimension.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, Guillermo, as we kind of wrap up our conversation on xenotransplantation, are there any key points that you would like our audience to remember and take away from today's discussion?
No, the only I would like to remember to the people is that there are no transplants if there are no donors. So your organs, when you die, are unuseful for you, but are very useful for, say, life. So the people should be really, really well in accordance of donate their organs. In fact, in Spain, we have changed our vision. You know, formerly we thought that somebody was so altruist that gives you an organ to keep you alive. And today we are absolutely convinced that the graft is so altruist that gives the body to keep alive a part of somebody that has died. So it's a different vision. And I think we should have much more education all over the world. I want to mean, in Spain it's still necessary, but I am absolutely convinced that this is universal and we should put an incredible effort educating the population that when you die, your organs are going to be destroyed. And if you donate, you can keep up to 5 persons alive. You can live more time in 5 different peoples. So it's amazing. It's amazing. I think the government should put more effort in education.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. So as we wrap up our podcast, we like to ask our guest speakers a couple of questions. The first one we like to ask you is, what is your favorite swine resource book?
Now, this is of Swine, by sure, of Iowa Press University, Iowa State University Press. Is the Bible, the Holy Bible of the swine diseases. In fact, I have the 6th edition. Oh my God! Now you can calculate my age. And I have the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, the 9th, the 10th, up to the 12th. That is the current edition, and I love this book. I have learned, and in fact, most of my learn proceed from this book. Is fantastic. And in fact, every one of my students that say me I want to be a swine veterinarian, I give as a present the digital version of the disease of swine. I say, this is the Bible, respect it and learn with the devotion you have to put.
Yes. It's a very good book. I think most of us do have it on our shelves, for sure. Well, how about when you're not talking about pigs and xenotransplants? Are there books that you enjoy reading in your leisure time?
It's difficult to find me in a moment in which I'm not talking about pigs, but anyway, when I read other books, I love an Spanish writer that unfortunately died two years ago, very young. That is Carlos Ruiz Zafón. All the novels of this writer are amazing, and I love history, And there is other Spanish writer that is Santiago Posteguillo. This is a university teacher in Valencia, in the University of Valencia, that take pieces of Spanish history, especially Roman Spanish history, and make novels, really, really well documented and really exciting and very, very dynamic books. I love this author. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, the last question we have for you is really, when you think about people that are successful, what characteristics do you see in those people that you think helps them to be successful?
All the people I know that has been successful, regardless the part of the life in which we are talking about. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about famous. Are people that are honest, that are hard workers, and that are intelligent people. But especially the 2 first. You can be not so intelligent, but if you are a hard worker, probably you will get your goals. Picasso is a genius of the painting, and this guy always said, the art is a question of inspiration. But I always try to be painting when arrive to me the inspiration. And this is the trick. You have to work hard, and you will get it. Sure.
Yes, very good point. Very good point. And I've heard that from other speakers as well, is that desire, that drive that you have, and if you work towards responding to that drive, you'll become successful, right? That hard work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Guillermo, I do again want to thank you for your time today. It's been a very educational discussion around xenotransplantation and all of the great work that you're doing. So again, I do want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for you, and every time you will invite me, I will be here, by sure. I enjoy very much your podcast, and it's a honor for me to share with your audience this piece of knowledge and to share with you this piece of time.
Yes,
thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Take care.
Imagine if, with a few key concepts, you could have the potential to create a massive positive impact by bringing from hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars for swine producers. Join us on this small group and go to the next level of swine nutrition on this 7-week-long elite online training in applied swine nutrition and feeding by myself and my world-class invited speakers. Additionally, you enjoy an exclusive community to exchange ideas. Go now to www.eliteswinenutritionist.com.